Right, so let's talk more about conditional operators in Python. But before we look at other conditional operators, let's review the code from the last video. So on line 6, we test to see if the original guess is less than 5. If it is, we print another message and allow another guess. If the original guess is not less than 5, then line 13 checks if it's greater than 5 using elif. We allow another guess if it's greater than 5. If neither of those conditions are true, then the guess must have been equal to 5. This is picked up by the final else on line 20. There are better ways to write code like this, as we'll see shortly. We've duplicated exactly the same code in the if and elif blocks. The duplicate lines are lines 8 to 12 and also 15 to 19. Whenever you see duplication like this happening, that's a good indication that it can be done better. For now though, this example has illustrated a number of important concepts. Alright, so let's talk about if blocks. So a block can be quite complex, including further if and else blocks and much more contained within it. When testing for equality, we can't use a single equal symbol. The single equal is used for assigning values to variables, so when testing for equality, we have to use two equal signs, the equals equals. An if statement can include many elif parts, but there can only be one else. Elif, by the way, is short for else if. The else, if there is one, must come after all the elif blocks. Duplicating code is generally a bad idea. There's almost always a better way. When testing conditions, we can use any of the value comparison operators. Now there are other types of comparisons we can perform, but we'll focus on these 6 for now. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and not equal to. Once again, remember that we test for equality using the two equal symbols. That's something you'll forget at first, but you'll get a syntax error if you use a single equal, which should remind you. Alright, so now we know how to test for not equal, we can simplify our program. What I'm going to do is change the first condition on line 6 to check if the guess is not equal to the answer. Now, so that you can compare the new code with what we've got at the moment, I'm going to comment out lines 6 through 21 and put the new code before it. In the JetBrains IDEs, you can comment out a block of code by using Control/ or Command/ on a Mac. So I'm going to select lines 6 through 21, Control/ in my case because I'm on Windows. Now I'm not aware of a way to do that in idle. You may have to edit each line individually if you're using idle. Now comments are ignored by the Python interpreter and they're there to document your code. In this case, the comments prevent the code from being executed. Generally, you should use them to explain when you've done something in a certain way, or as a reminder of certain conditions or variable states that may not be obvious by looking at the code. Remember that you may come back to modify code weeks or months or even years after you wrote it. Documentation can be extremely helpful when you work on another programmer's code for the first time or come back to your own code after a gap. In Python, comments, as you can see, start with the hash symbol, and they actually can appear on a line on their own or at the end of a line of code. You can't place them in the middle of a line though. The hash inside a string is treated just like any other character and doesn't include a comment. If you want to comment or span several lines, and start each line with a hash, as I've done here. Alright, so let's now start typing in some new code. So I'm going to come up to the top here, and specifically on line 6, I'm going to start typing if guess is not equal. We're using the not equal comparison operator answer colon. And the next line, line 7, I'm going to do if guess is less than answer colon print parentheses double quotes and please guess higher in those double quotes. Otherwise I'm going to do an else, noting that I've gone indented back at the same level as the if on line 7, else colon. I'm going to put a comment here, hash guess must be greater than answer. I'm going to print, or type in print, parentheses, double quotes, please guess lower. Then on the next line, I'm going to go back a level again. So I'm at the same level as the else now. Guess equals int, left parentheses, input left to right parentheses and closing right parentheses for our guess. Then I'm going to type if guess is equal to answer, so two equal signs, colon, print, parentheses, double quotes, and well done, you guessed it in double quotes. else, again at the same level as the if, colon, print, parentheses, double quotes, sorry, you have not guessed correctly. And then I'm going to go back again, so we're all the way to the left margin, again lined up with the if on line 6, else, colon, print, parentheses, double quotes, you got it first time. Okay, so there's our code. So once again, this highlights the importance of indentation in Python. Our second guess on line 11 is at the same indentation level as the if and else statements on lines 7 and 9. It's not dependent on either condition, in other words. We get a different message if guess is greater than 5 or less than 5, but line 11 is executed regardless of the outcome of the if-else clauses. I've also added a comment to the code on line 9. This makes it clear to any humans reading the code what's happening. If you were to read the inner block in isolation, it may not be obvious that the guess must be greater than 5 rather than a greater than equal to, i.e. not less than 5. The comment draws attention to the fact that we would not have got into the inner block if guess is equal to 5. You can often do the same thing in many different ways, and this is an example of doing that. This new code does exactly the same thing as the previous code. That's the code now that has been commented out on lines 19 through 34. And I'm going to take the opportunity to remove our breakpoint there. Now this can often confuse new programmers because there's usually more than one way to do the same thing. Both of these bits of code will produce exactly the same results when given the same inputs. Of course, the code on lines 19 through 34 won't do anything now because they start with a hash. In other words, it's been commented out. They're ignored when we run the program. But if they weren't commented out, they'd produce the same results as the code we've now got on lines 6 through 17. So let's check that by running the program to make sure that it still works. Right, so I'm going to use the same guesses that I used in the previous video. The first guess was 9, so I'm going to do that again. And we get the message, please guess lower. I'm going to enter 5 as the second guess. Well done, you guessed it. I'm going to run the program again and use 1 as our first guess. So please guess higher is output to the screen. 5, it's my second guess. Well done, you guessed it. So that's still working. Run it one more time. Run the program again. 1. This time we're going to enter 9. Sorry, you have not guessed correctly. So that's working fine and produces exactly the same results as the previous now commented out code. You may also want to set breakpoints and run the code in the debugger. Remember to think about which lines should be executed before stepping over the conditions to verify your results. Alright, so I'm going to finish this video now with a challenge and we'll go over the solution to the challenge in the next video. So the challenge is to change the condition on line 6 to if guess is equal to answer, and you saw that previously it was not equal to answer. So change it so it says if guess is equal to answer, and then change the program in the appropriate places to give the correct results. Alright, so that's the challenge. See how you go with the challenge, and we'll go over the solution to the challenge in the next video.